Okay, so joining us now is Lizzy Becherano, who's been covering Inter Miami during the tournament so far. And Lizzy, I think we spoke about a month ago, and I was quite dismissive about Inter Miami's chances, thinking that we're a team of veterans that were going to get embarrassed. So I've been pretty much wrong on that one, haven't I?
Yeah, you have. I mean, I will say you're not the only one who thought so. There were a lot of doubts coming into this tournament. I think even internal, Sergio Busquets saying they were not at the level to compete. Messi saying that he had different expectations than when he was at Barcelona and competing in earlier editions. You're not the only one, but they made history and now have qualified to the round of 16.
So what does this mean for MLS? I mean, because it must be a great boost for MLS to have all their teams into the knockout stages. Because again, people would think that MLS is quite a weak league. It's where European players go to retire. So this must be a real boost for MLS, and it's standing in the world.
Yes and no. I think the perception of Major League Soccer, given the participation of the Sounders and LAFC, hasn't necessarily changed. I think the case of Inter Miami is interesting because there's still a team with Lionel Messi on it. So the expectations were obviously different than considering them a regular Major League Soccer side. So from what I've seen and heard, I think the idea is, well, Messi is still Messi, and MLS has one of the greatest players in their team, but the rest are still at the same level that many thought would be in Major League Soccer.
Lizzy, do you think? I'm curious to know. In Miami, do you feel? Does it feel different? Does the city feel like there's a tournament on? Because in Philadelphia, it's not always felt like that. When the Brazilian teams have been here, but there's been a big influx of a fan base, and you felt the kind of city's sort of shift. You know, the dynamic shift a bit. What's it been like in Miami? Has there been a? Does it feel like there's a tournament on?
Yes, very much so. I think the teams that got to play in Miami made it very interesting. Obviously, we've seen the commotion of the Boca Juniors fans. That was particularly interesting because Miami has such a condensed Argentinian community. So not only did thousands and thousands of Boca Juniors fans actually travel and make their way about the city and do like the flag um, demonstration on the beach, but they're playing here awoken like all the Argentinian support living in Miami. So I have never seen so many Boca Juniors jerseys being worn around, and not just for the games, but more so just like in regular pre-match days, pre-match activities, just around the city. And the same thing kind of happened with Palmeiras yesterday, where the days leading up to the game, there was green jerseys everywhere, fans kind of flocking to different aspects of Miami. So it does have that international feel that you would feel with a World Cup, where you see so many fan bases kind of coming in, getting to know the city, playing tourist, and then having their own fan rituals and demonstrations and traditions around the city. So I think that has been particularly cool. But I do think it made it so because of the communities that were already here. So there was like this connection between incoming fans and then like Miami residents.
Lizzy, obviously this has been, you mentioned the World Cup then, and I guess this has been a little bit of a dry run for the World Cup in a year's time. Have you had enough time to sort of have any views about how ready the US is to host a World Cup? Have you got any worries? Anything that's gone better than you perhaps thought?
A lot of concerns, yes. I think a lot of people have asked me whether the 2026 World Cup is going to be a success. And that word I think is really relative because it's a success to who? Fans will come, international fans will travel, stadiums will be full. We've seen it at Hard Rock. I mean, there's been 3 or more games that have seen 60,000 fans plus in attendance. So in that sense, yes, it's a World Cup, and a World Cup will always draw audiences, especially now with the larger format. But there are obviously concerns. I mean, the weather has been one of them. A lot of international figures have spoken about the weather and this heat and whether or not they'll be able to play in it. And obviously the infrastructure of certain cities. I mean, I went to Atlanta. That stadium seems to be great, but Hard Rock still struggles with public transportation, security aspects, and not even considering the whole pitch conversation that I know Jude Bellingham came out to say that it's been quite difficult. And I believe it was Lautaro Martinez also that mentioned the pitches being an issue. So there are definitely like various concerns, some that FIFA do have control over, like the pitches and to a certain extent the transportation, but others like weather that is going to be difficult, whether that is simply the heat or the storms and the summer hurricanes that come through. Now, we can get into why FIFA decided on 12 p.m. or 3 p.m. kickoff times and how that is tailored more towards TV audiences than actual attending fans. And maybe they'll change that for the World Cup, maybe not. But there are definitely concerns. But that's not to say that people won't travel. It's a World Cup. We saw it in Qatar.
Lizzy, just on the travelling, and obviously you mentioned the Boca fans in Miami and the big Argentinian community. We saw last year from afar how kind of chaotic the Copa America was, certainly with a lot of the Colombia fans as well. Do you think that lessons have been learned from that? Is it too difficult to tell? Because it's a much smaller sample size, isn't it, for a club World Cup, because you're not getting the whole movement of a nation. But I guess we saw last year what will probably happen next year, and it could even be bigger because it's a World Cup. So I guess we're looking at Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, all these huge nations in South and Central America are going to be the top of the tournament because of what happened last year and because of their huge fan bases.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes that have been made, and I will say props to FIFA and props to particularly Hard Rock, which was obviously the scene of the very chaotic final between Colombia and Argentina. This time around, there's a lot of security points that limit which fans and how fans enter the stadium. So during Copa America, literally anybody could have made their way to the stadium doors and found a way to get in. Now, this time around, in order to enter the perimeter of the parking lot, which is around 1 mile before even getting to the stadium doors, you need to show ID, you need to show your ticket, you need to be able to show that you have purchased access to this game. And then after that, there's another security point or even getting to your seat. So I think that coupled with a lot of security presence, I mean, FIFA kind of made a partnership with Miami-Dade Police and Hard Rock Security. So there's been a lot of security aspects and a lot of security present in every game. I haven't seen chaos at all. That's not to say there hasn't been, but I think it's been managed well. There's definitely a sense of order when it comes to these games rather than what we saw at Copa, which was more so kind of just chaos. Like really anybody could have showed up. Anybody could have tailgated. These fans tend to drink a lot before heading into the match. So I think that coupled with a lack of security presence didn't really help. And so FIFA has done a decent job and managing that.
I think one of the issues that I've noticed, and I was at the opening game with Lizzy in Miami, is the lack of public transport is an issue. I mean, Mark and James, we were both in Qatar, and that was one element of that tournament that worked quite well, that underground system that just took you to the majority of the stadiums when fans were kind of piling out. The queues seemed quite orderly. The trains kept coming every couple of minutes, and it got people out off the site pretty quickly. And I know that American culture is to drive to these big events, park and tailgate and stuff. It's just not what European and South American fans are used to. I think it's a little bit different getting to a game because it obviously depends on what time you get your Uber and your taxi and you get dropped off and you can sort of walk towards the stadium. It's getting out has been an issue. And obviously as journalists, we're all kind of hanging around a little bit after the game anyway for mixed zones and press conferences, but we've been coming out sort of an hour and a half, 2 hours after the full-time whistle. And there has been a little bit of chaos, with fans trying to get away from these stadiums, walking miles to find Ubers not being allowed into the sort of perimeter of the stadium and people sort of walking, miles down these quite busy roads really to find somewhere where an Uber can pick them up. Now, I know obviously it's something that that local organising committees and FIFA will look at ahead of the World Cup. I'm just not sure how much change there can be, in terms of those issues. I mean, it's different in some places. For the game in Philadelphia City's game, match day -1 and match day, we were able to get the metro from the city centre out to the stadium. That seemed to work quite well, but those facilities just don't exist in a lot of these American cities. And if you get a load of European fans and South American fans piling into these cities for World Cup games, that could be chaos, particularly after games.
Yeah, and just a little bit to point out on that, I think we saw during Copa games at MetLife in particular that does have an access point with a train. However, for us journalists, that train stops running at a certain point, and more times than not, we were finished once that service ended. So it was up to you to find transportation, whether that be Uber at 2, sometimes even 2:30 in the morning. And most of these stadiums tend to be further away from the city in not so great areas. And I do want to point out Hard Rock because, again, a lot of people think it's in Miami, and it's not. It's Miami Gardens, which, if you're local, is a huge distinction. And you absolutely don't want to be there by yourself at 2:30 in the morning. And so there's been cases of media shuttles. They don't accommodate the influx of journalists. So I cannot imagine for fans where in Miami there is no public transportation like there is in Philadelphia, and it is absolutely not walkable.
I would just say on that, we should just flag that is a problem in Europe as well. San Siro is one of the most iconic stadiums in Europe, and it is a pain to get away from that stadium. They tend to shut the metro about midnight, and there have been times where you cannot get a cab for love nor money, and you are walking a long way. And I've done that with a lot of fans, hundreds of fans who are still trying to get away. The Allianz Arena at Munich is another one where it's a long, long walk to the rail link there, and that shuts. And then you can be waiting a long time to try and get an Uber to come and pick you up to take you back into the city. So I think we should just, for balance, we should at least just say that this is a problem that affects established sort of European powerhouse cities and clubs. This is not just a case of us going and looking at America and saying, oh, your public transport doesn't suit this tournament.
Yeah, that gives me the excuse to talk about getting back from Juventus Stadium this season when it involved a Juventus Ultra, a unlicensed taxi in a spade, or a short in the back of his car being stopped by police at 2:00 in the morning. So, yeah, these things tend to be kind of global and dramatic wherever you go. I'm sure we've all got those stories as well, but I'm really looking forward to my trip to Miami Gardens next week now, Lizzy. Thanks for that. It's all that I need some security of the machines. Yeah.
You're the first person who's ever said that in their entire.
Yeah, I think there's probably an element of sarcasm there, but yeah, at 2:00 in the morning, I was thinking, yeah, this is the place to be. But I mean, overall, Lizzy, I mean, Miami has been a success in terms of, they brought colour to it, they brought Messi's goal, like James was referencing earlier on about the free kick he scored in the game against Porto. They have been a positive story from this tournament. A lot of people are thinking it's going to be a negative tournament, but they have been a positive. Even though they shouldn't be there, they've been a positive story.
Oh, I think you just hit on one of the biggest Major League Soccer's controversies in recent history. They think they deserve a place, and you know what? I think they made it work to a certain extent. No, they've definitely been a success. Internal markers. We heard Jorge Mas, co-owner of the team, we heard Javier Mascherano, head coach, mention that their target for success was always qualifying to the round of 16. I mean, they wanted to make it out of the group and then go game by game. Many outbalanced that and said they got one of the easiest groups and they should 100% go through. I don't believe that to be true to a certain extent. But they've definitely succeeded in what they wanted to do. And I think that's been great, especially the game against Porto. I think had they beaten Al-Ahly, drawn against Palmeiras, and then drawn against Porto, it would be a different story. But beating Porto the way that they did, I think allows for this team to still be considered relevant and for Messi to still be considered relevant, no matter his age, which 38 today.
So the big question is, will Inter Miami still be in the tournament when I get there next week? That's debatable, I guess.
See, that's a hard one. I mean, they got PSG.
No.
Like,
I don't double close now, just keep it going.
I mean, listen, Jordi Alba said yesterday, why can't they dream? And yeah, why can't they? So, no, but also, why can't they dream?
That's a good enough way to end this section. We're now going to throw to Alex Kirkland, who's been with Real Madrid, who definitely expect to be there when I get out there next week. So we'll speak to Alex next. But cheers, Lizzy.